As a business owner, you've likely heard the terms exempt and non-exempt in relation to your employees or hiring practices. These classifications are outlined in the Fair Labor Standards Act, which essentially outlines how work hours are documented and how employees should be paid. Understanding labor laws and overtime requirements can be confusing, but employers must classify their employees' violations. The term non-exempt basically refers to workers who are not exempt from the law, while the term exempt refers to workers who qualify for exemption from the law. However, categorization is complex and requires a determination of the employee's status under the U.S. Department of Labor Fair Labor Standards Act. By assessing your employee's position, you can better understand your obligations as an employer. The information contained here has been prepared by Civitas Strategies Early Start and is not intended to constitute legal, tax, or financial advice. The Civitas Strategies Early Start team has used reasonable efforts in collecting, preparing, and providing this information, but does not guarantee its accuracy, completeness, adequacy, or currency. The publication and distribution of this information is not intended to create, and receipt does not constitute, an attorney-client or any other advisory relationship. Reproduction of this information is expressly prohibited. However, this presentation should not be considered tax advice. Please consult with your tax preparer or accounting professional for specific guidance and information regarding depreciation for your business. Today, we'll discuss the parameters that define exempt and non-exempt employees, go over the different types of exemptions that may apply to individuals working in childcare, and the FSLA overtime requirements. Employees are classified based on two criteria: a salary amount threshold and the kind of work they perform. Those considered exempt must be paid a salary above a certain level and must have specific duties. An employee that has a salary basis of no less than $684 per week or $35,568 annually is classified as exempt. However, for teachers, that threshold is lower, at $455 a week or $23,660 a year. While overtime pay is not required for these workers, they can be given additional compensation in the form of bonuses or stipends. These employees must work as management, administrators, learned professionals, or teachers employed in an educational establishment, and we will discuss these specifics later on. Employers are not required to pay overtime to properly classified exempt workers, while non-exempt employees are required to receive overtime for any hours worked over 40 each week. Exempt employees must receive their full salary regardless of the number of days or hours worked, and are also excluded from other FLSA protections afforded to those who are non-exempt. Non-exempt employees are usually paid an hourly wage or earn a salary that's less than the minimum amount required. Since they are not exempt from the FSLA, non-exempt employees who work more than 40 hours in a week must be paid an overtime rate of 1.5 times their regular pay. If a non-exempt employee isn't paid by the hour but is entitled to overtime pay, their hourly rate is calculated by dividing the total compensation earned by the total hours worked, not including vacation, holidays, or sick days used. In 1972, the FSLA was amended specifically to extend the coverage of the law to preschools and childcare centers, including both public and private institutions and for and nonprofit models. Covered early education enterprises are ones that provide custodial, education, or developmental services to preschool-aged children to prepare them to enter elementary school grades, according to the FSLA. Family child care providers, or home-based providers, are not considered covered under this amendment unless they have employees. If a child care business's employees are not otherwise exempt due to their salary level or assigned duties, the employer is required to meet FSLA guidelines. This includes establishing a set work week for pay purposes, maintaining payroll records, paying at least the federal minimum wage, and paying the required overtime rate for more than 40 hours worked. Independent contractors are not covered by the FSLA, so they are not entitled to the wage and overtime pay benefits outlined in the law. As aforementioned, in addition to salary, the type of work completed by an employee is a criteria used to determine whether that individual is exempt. This includes standards related to the position they hold, the type of jobs and duties they perform, and their level of authority or autonomy to make decisions. Specific types of exemptions in childcare based on job requirements include the executive or management exemption, the learned professional exemption, and the teacher exemption. An exempt executive position is one who oversees a unit or department and who regularly directs the work of 2 or more employees. To qualify, this employee's work duties must fall into this area at least half the time. Management duties such as interviewing, directing work, evaluating performance, or initiating disciplinary actions count as exempt activities. In contrast, routine clerical duties like billing, filing, and bookkeeping do not. In larger childcare centers, this likely means that the director is exempt as the majority of their duties include those classified as executive or managerial in relation to the rest of the staff. An assistant director probably falls in a gray area, as they may spend more than 50% of their time filing in classrooms and performing the same duties as other members of the staff. It is important to understand that management titles alone do not determine exemption status. In some cases, an employee that performs the work of a teacher could be considered exempt from the FSLA requirements under the Learned Professionals exemption. For an employee in a teacher position to qualify, their main responsibilities must involve instructing, tutoring, or lecturing children. If their main role is to ensure the well-being of the children and meet their physical and emotional needs, they will not be exempt based on their role. Additionally, exempt employees must perform administrative or professional duties at least 50% of the time. It is difficult for childcare teachers, especially those who work with the youngest children, to meet that percentage. A childcare teacher will qualify as an exempt employee under the Learned Professional exemption if the teacher is paid on a salary basis no less than $455 a week, or $23,660 a year. The teacher's primary duties are lesson instruction or work that educates children in their care, rather than activities that meet their physical or emotional well-being, or the job is performed by a teacher requiring an advanced knowledge in the field of science or learning, which means the position must require a degree in early education or a related field. Regulations also include a specific teacher's exemption. This exemption has more relaxed parameters and there are no minimum degree or salary requirements. However, one added requirement makes it inapplicable to most childcare providers. To qualify for the exemption, the teacher must be employed by an educational establishment like a school. Unless a childcare business is certified by their state Department of Education as a preschool or kindergarten, the teacher exemption does not apply to their employees. Labor experts and regulators have identified several problems that occur related to childcare employees. Not accurately counting employees' hours is one common mistake. Employees who are off the clock for a meal or break, but are still required to supervise children, speak with parents, or run a work-related errand should still be recording time for that work week. In addition, employers are scrutinized for requiring employees to stay late, come early, or attend a training on their own time, or for a flat fee instead of their hourly wage. Other acts that could be considered violations are improperly deducting pay, paying a flat fee for overtime, or paying proper overtime after 80 hours in 2 weeks instead of the stated 40 in 1 week. To avoid confusion, business owners should include the status of the position on the actual job description or in the employee handbook, and staff should sign a copy that will be placed in the employee's records. Exemption rule and labor laws are complicated and often dependent on specific instances related to your business or your staff positions. In many cases, speaking directly with a qualified compensation consultant or labor attorney can be helpful to gain clarity on classification, wage, or human resource matters. You can sign up for one-on-one coaching with our experts at www.childcare.texas.gov. In addition to registering for business coaching, you can access free information, resources, and tools related to finances, staffing, operations, and many more topics.